for us this morning. Daniela.
Yes, Charlie, the Duke will have that operation on his hip at some point today. Buckingham Palace haven't given us any indication on timing, and they've said that they won't be giving us sort of any medical running commentary on how he's doing. But as you say, we do know he's had this problem with his hip over the past month or so, causing him increasing pain and discomfort to the point where it was now felt necessary to undertake hip surgery. We had sort of got a sense that things perhaps were more serious and causing him more problems than we had once thought over the weekend when he didn't appear alongside the Queen and other members of the royal family at the traditional Easter services, a sign that things were perhaps more difficult and would need some medical intervention. At 96 there are always risks, but he is a fit and healthy man, and the hope is that he'll be back to full fitness in time for the wedding of his grandson Prince Harry to Meghan Markle next month.
Daniela, thanks very much.
Britain's biggest airport is set to overhaul how disabled passengers access their wheelchairs once they've landed. Currently, they're sent to the baggage reclaim area, but from June it's hoped that wheelchairs will be brought to the plane door.
Today, the government has announced plans to work more closely with the aviation industry in a bid to make flying more enjoyable for those with reduced mobility. Here's our disability correspondent, Nikki Fox.
When Gemma's not working, she loves to travel, but it's not easy. She has spinal muscular atrophy and can't stand or walk. Last year she went to Florida with family and friends. It was her dream holiday and it all went smoothly until she returned home and had to get off the plane.
3 or 4 men came on. Very quickly my level of confidence went from perfectly fine to hang on a minute, what's going on? They don't know what they're doing here. How am I going to get off the aircraft safely?
To get off the plane, Gemma needed to be lifted straight from her seat to a narrow aisle chair, but it didn't go well.
I was just in a position that was so undignified, so embarrassing. I was crying at this point. I was in a lot of pain. I was in a position that
issues disabled people have when flying.
Most recent figures show that the number of disabled people and those with mobility restrictions that pass through UK airports increased to more than 3 million. 1.2 million of those come through Heathrow.
Last year, a Civil Aviation Authority report was critical of the service Heathrow provides disabled passengers, ranking it as poor. I wanted to put some of the complaints we'd received to the management of the airport to see what they were doing to tackle the problem.
Staff having zero training, being denied pre-boarding, one of them, an appalling disregard for disabled passengers institutionalised at Heathrow. So they're just a few.
Every time we get feedback which is negative, that's unacceptable to us. Some of the things we're working on are looking at how we make the service of passengers being taken onto the aircraft far more comfortable. And the other key part of the process is obviously the repatriation of passengers' wheelchairs to them after their flight.
There are now plans here to make sure wheelchairs are returned to aircraft doors as standard instead of them ending up in baggage reclaim. But is that enough? And are airlines as well as airports doing their bit to make flying more accessible?
If you want to travel by air, prepare to be uncomfortable, prepare to be manhandled, and don't even think about using a toilet.
Chris Wood has a disabled son and daughter. He wants to see wheelchairs allowed inside the aircraft, eliminating the need for transfers and long waits.
Quite often that's the case.
His campaign has already led to meetings with manufacturers to develop flight-safe wheelchairs.
It needs the whole industry to come together to resolve it, and everybody join together as one and say, yeah, this is not right, hey, we're out of touch, but we're dealing with it now.
But wheelchairs on planes in the short term is unlikely. Right now, many disabled passengers feel that current legislation doesn't do enough to protect them.
The airlines have really got it stitched up. There's an international treaty called the Montreal Convention, and that says that you can't bring any kind of legal claim for discrimination for anything that happens between embarkation, which is getting on the plane, and disembarkation.
Today, the government has told us as part of its upcoming aviation strategy, it plans to work with industry to improve everything, from staff training to the design of aircraft. But it will take more than just plans before many disabled passengers feel comfortable taking to the skies. Nikki Fox, BBC News.
Nikki joins us now as well. Nikki, so many issues being brought up there. Bathrooms we can get onto in a moment, but let's just talk about this new law now, the rules that the chairs are now going to be brought to the plane, which to me just makes common sense.
Yeah, I mean, this is Heathrow specifically. They haven't, it's not a definite, but they're aiming for that to be the case from June. So wheelchairs being brought, again, like you say, common sense. As standard, they go to the aircraft door. Most disabled people want to get straight back in their own chair. You know, I was having a chat with Frank Gardner of the back
our
of,
security correspondent.
Yeah, our security correspondent. And he was saying he doesn't want to go in another chair. He wants to be in his chair so that he can get around, you know, on his own. So it's a huge problem. Wheelchairs are a big problem. Yeah, and I'm looking through some of that. I know you've had loads of comments here. Yeah. One from Tony here who said, disabled travellers like my wife are treated so much better at non-UK airports. He was mentioning Cambodia, particularly, where they were treated very well in Cambodia. Jill, airport experience in a wheelchair is a nightmare. I was left alone, no access to food or drink for an hour until airline staff arrived. Is it a particular problem here? I mean, is there something in that we're somehow behind the time? Well, it's the same people that I speak to do say that when they go further afield, there's more of a kind of hands-on, let's just get you from A to B approach, you know, and there's not so much of this kind of, you know, when we go on disabled people go on an aisle chair, for example, when they have to be transferred from the aisle chair to the plane seat, you get strapped in and all of this, and it's all very kind of health and safety, whereas obviously, you know, I've been further afield, and it's just kind of like, let's just whip you off the plane. Some people like that. I mean, I don't mind. I'm happy. Just get me off. Yeah, I mean, the airlines might say in that situation that they think they're doing the right thing, but that leads possibly to more complication, more time, more hassle, and ultimately more embarrassment, possibly for the individual. It's such a big operation as well, so there are a lot of things to consider, you know, in sort of different people look after different areas, but simple things like getting on and off the plane, you know, thinking, fingers crossed, my possibly 30-gram wheelchair is not going to be damaged and I'm not going to be left at the other end and not be able to enjoy my holiday and stay in bed the whole time, which is someone who tweeted me about that. You know, and then when I get home, I'm going to be able to work and live and do all the things, you know. There's something called the Montreal Convention, which many disabled people feel is very outdated. And so because of that convention, for example, if your very expensive wheelchair does get damaged, it's sort of deemed the same as luggage. So you only get around £1,000 compensation for that. That's nowhere near enough for a lot of people.